A warm welcome to our St. Joseph Novena Reflections. I'm Sister Jane Stoecker, and I will be sharing reflections with you on several aspects of St. Joseph during this 9-day novena. Today I'll be reflecting with you on the silence by which we identify St. Joseph. The second day we will explore three of his predominant virtues: his faith, obedience, and hope or trust. The following 5 days will reflect on the sorrows and joys that St. Joseph experienced in his life. The last 2 days will reflect on the beautiful titles of St. Joseph the Worker, Patron of the Dying, and Patron of the Universal Church. Each day, these reflections will conclude with an invitation to spend time in prayer with St. Joseph. We will then pray the Memorare to St. Joseph as our novena prayer. My role in this novena reflections is to help you move more deeply into prayer and into your own conversations with St. Joseph. And while I hope these reflections will be helpful, it will be your own commitment to prayer that is most essential. That's where the real dynamic of grace takes place.
Pope Benedict XVI wrote in his encyclical, Guardian of the Redeemer, "Let us allow ourselves to be infected by the silence of St. Joseph." In this first presentation, I'd like to look at the great silence of St. Joseph that draws him into a marvelous depth of relationship with God and with Jesus and Mary.
The Gospels are far from loquacious when it comes to St. Joseph. And yet the Gospel passages concerning St. Joseph are rich in hidden meanings. The few details that are given become extremely enlightening when we ponder them. And we read, "Suddenly, in the Gospels, Joseph appears. Nothing about his birth, nothing about his earlier life, nothing about his death, and no words of St. Joseph have ever been recorded. But the scriptural text regarding St. Joseph are rich in hidden meaning, which we will see very specifically when we move through his sorrows and joys." Father Michael Gasnier, in his book, The Silent Joseph, writes, "The details that the scriptures give, sparse as they are, become, when meditated upon, suffused with light. They enable us to form a true, finely drawn, attractive portrait, so that this life so obscure, so withdrawn, appears before us alive and gripping. Almost like a silent movie, you only need to watch to understand. You know almost immediately, by the actions and behaviors, exactly what kind of a person the actress or actor is portraying. Really, no words are necessary."
As people, we reveal who we are, not only by our words, but by our body language and our actions. Joseph listens and then acts. We learn of Joseph's faithfulness in his silence, which is a fundamental attitude that precedes entering into deep prayer.
We learn a lot about St. Joseph from the contemplative way he did rather prayed his work. We can imagine that even in Joseph's silence, he could not understand the circumstances that surrounded Jesus' conception and birth, no matter how long Joseph would ponder the reality of it all. We know through scriptures that the child born of Mary is not the son of Joseph, nor any other man for that matter, but the Son of God. Yet Joseph was able to embrace and love what he did not fully understand.
For Saint Joseph, it is in silence, that absence of noise and the stillness of his soul, that he is able to encounter God.
After the scriptural story that surrounded the birth of Jesus, Joseph moves to the background and almost disappears from the story of the Holy Family. Joseph is eloquent in his role, and perhaps the silence of Saint Joseph is his most profound witness. It was obviously Saint Joseph who taught Jesus how to speak. Jesus learned from Joseph's style of teaching. Yet we do not have a single word attributed to Joseph. Throughout the shortness of his appearance in the Gospels, we find that his actions clearly belie his silence. All attention is now to be on Jesus and Mary. In a homily by Father Steve Grunell, CEO of Word on Fire, we are reminded that saints are not celebrities who use every detail of their lives to be known and recognized. He goes on to describe a saint as someone who, in the desire to be like Christ, is able and willing to disappear into the mission God has given them. For some, this may bring a great deal of attention, but for most, Father Steve goes on to say, the life of grace involves a much lower profile and a death to self, which requires an immersion into the most ordinary of circumstances. Father Steve continues, and so it is for all of us who find ourselves steeped in the mission, be it within the family, the church, or the single life, to be unnoticed saints in ordinary day-to-day circumstances, who can somewhat understand that the silence of Joseph speaks louder than any words. May you know God's love and the silent presence of Saint Joseph in your lives. As we conclude this reflection, I invite you to take some quiet time.
Be aware of the silent presence of Saint Joseph. What wisdom might you learn from his silent presence?
As we close this first day of our Novena reflections, I invite you to pray the Memorare with us.
What consolation I feel, O my amiable and powerful protector, to hear your servant Saint Teresa assure us that no one has ever invoked you in vain, and that all those who have true devotion to you and invoke your assistance with confidence have always been answered. Animated by a similar confidence, I have recourse to you, O worthy spouse of the Virgin of Virgins. I take refuge at your feet, and though I am a sinner, I present myself before you. Reject not my humble prayers, O you who have borne the glorious name of the Father of Jesus, but listen favorably to them, and deign to intercede for us with him who vouchsafed to be called your Son, and who has always honored you as his Father. Amen.